Righto, money minders. So there've been mullet requests for me on YouTube.
I missed that. Hey, look at that, mate.
Look at it coming along. It's not at Russell Delroy level yet, but
Can I just say, mate, ever since you met Rusty, you've started wearing long shirts and growing a mullet.
yeah, I know. Well, my fingernails are still normal, but bloody anyway.
next to go, yeah.
Yet to be subject to change.
Not a bad role model to have.
Yeah, what a bloody GC, one of the foundation GCs. Right, today, what do we got? We've got a bit going on. Fortescue getting bloody dumped or tidied up or whatever, down 5%, and that's 5% of a fucking $70 billion company.
It's a lot.
So she's a bit. As I know my place, and today that place, Niger. We're going through bloody last year, previous years, what's going on in Niger in the world of uranium, because Jesus Christ, I'm interested.
Yeah, you're very much becoming the uranium geopolitical expert.
Geopolitics, Jesus, holy snap and duck shit.
You play your cards right, we'll send you out for a site visit, mate.
Not getting any Qantas freaking fly points to Niger anytime. Now, what else we got? JD, you're into bloody the diversified analyst that you are. You're into beach.
Yeah,
you're into oil and gas.
They had a huge strategic review, which is usually pretty ominous, but it was pretty interesting to flick through. And then we're going to go...
Just trying to get onto Kerry Stokes' radar.
Play my cards right. And then we're going to go
such
to...
a JD thing to do.
We're going to look at three of the sort of up-and-coming open pit gold mines, 2 in WA and 1 to be announced overseas.
Yeah, bloody jobs.
Gold!
Go Australia. Oh, right. Trav, what's going on here? So Fortescue, bloody, the article come out. There was a bit of a big block trade yesterday, $1.1 billion worth.
$1.1 billion. I think the line's being done by, coordinated by JP Morgan. So the seller has elected or has been happy to sell their, enormous kind of stock position at a 6% discount. And, the stock's kind of, just now hovering all day, kind of 5% lower than it was at last close. AFRs, they were first to report it, and it's a whopping 1.6% of the entire company. So it's like a pretty chunky position.
So who the hell have you figured out who it possibly might be?
Well, we were just pulling up the largest shareholders of Fortescue, just sort of thinking, well, if it's 1.6%, surely not that many, shareholders even own that much. You can kind of deduce it by whoever's bloody left there, right? So we can whip up this, this list of Fortescue's top shareholders. Of course, you got Tatarang there. Then there's this Varlin Holdings. I don't know if I'm saying that right. They according to S&P, have 8.7%, Capital Group 7.7%, Emichrome 3.02%. Below that, you're kind of getting into the passive world that would still fit the category, and we're just going to put a line through the Vanguard and BlackRock. So let's look at those three, right? Valin Holdings is apparently Hunan Iron and Steel Group. I think this is the most likely seller. It appears they've been trimming their position pretty regularly. Here's an article from the Fin in 2019 when they were trimming. The article there with the good-looking Brad Thompson as the author, it says that they were 13.06% back then, and obviously it's much lower position now. At 8.7, it might be another 1.6% lower than that by the time this is over.
So they bought
some of the best honey in WA comes from Brad Thompson's hives. I'd just like to say,
you can find articles in the Fin of Hunan buying they bought 17% of the company back in 2009. For a bit over $700 million. So
aren't they fucking loaded now?
Yeah, well, there's been bits
sure they
of
were before that
selling throughout, but yeah.
Speaking of freaking loaded, Matty, there's that Emichrome on the register there. That's actually this Malaysian-born Mr. Casey Wong who per this article from the Fin. Look at the title there. Twiggy made me a billionaire. And this was an article from all the way back in 2008. So pretty wealthy fella. At the time of that article, he was living in Sydney. But yeah, clearly just a huge winner off the back of the growth and rise of Fortescue back in the day. And then you've got Capital Group. So they last filed a change of substantial in early 2022 when they bought an additional % on market. It could be them as well. But very curious how it all plays out, Matty. Because you don't see giant block trades like this in ASX mining stocks very often. Like it's pretty rare.
And I assume the Twiggy and Nicholas stake is held under Tatarang. So it's not like one of, I think.
I don't know. There was a change of substantial like a year ago, which was what clued the whole media circuit onto the fact that there was a separation there. So I don't know if it's technically Tatarang
so were
or
they under different?
it could be a subsidiary Tatarang. I don't know how it all works, to be honest. But there was some technicality and there was a change substantial, which, it's like literally almost exactly a year ago.
So maybe it's not. Don't know. Right, boys. Do you know what's happening in Niger?
I have heard a bit about this, but you know in much more detail, so I'll leave it up to you.
JD, you're going to know a fuckload more.
I'm keen to hear it,
Jesus,
mate.
is it this new Niger? What's been going on in Niger? It's been going on for a bit now. The political, the French, the US, the Russian insurgents fighting against Islamists. How do you say?
Islamist militants?
Islamist. That's the one, JD. This is what I've got you here for. So the article I'll tell you, we'll go yesterday, then we're going back, and then we'll get back to this eventually. The article came out yesterday claiming that the French nuclear company, Orano, who we talk about a bit, they may lose a Niger uranium mine to Russia.
That's a big deal, right?
So the mine in question is I did Microsoft Word read aloud and I've forgotten already. Imararan.
Let's go with that, mate.
Imararan.
Let's just keep the ball rolling, hey?
You got to include that. That's so funny.
Right, we're back. Imararan.
Good to have clarity.
Is that how I said it the first time?
Yes.
That's the mine. Well, it's one of the world's biggest uranium deposits. I didn't realise how bloody big this thing is. So Orano own 66.5% pretty much of it, and the remainder is owned by the Niger-controlled public entity, which they call Supplier. Now, the project contains reserves of 556 million pounds of U3O8. Fucking
Reserves.
huge. I did a bit of conversions there, so I'm just talking in pounds of U3O8. So it should be something bloody big. Put a bit of context on what the size of that is. Cameco and Orano, they own the MacArthur River and Cigar Lake in the Athabasca Basin. If you combine them two, they've got reserves of 588 million pounds. So this Amararan is nearly as big as them together.
These are reserves too, not
reserves.
Not resources.
Yeah, so there's probably fucking shit everywhere over there. So now, let's talk a bit about the French nuclear company Orano before we get into what the fuck's happening in Niger, because there's a bit going on there. So they're sort of the non-controlling owners of Cigar Lake and MacArthur River with, so Cameco, the operator. And so Cameco got 55% of Cigar Lake, 70% of MacArthur River, and then Orano have 40% of Cigar Lake, 30% of MacArthur River. That's obviously locking in the supply to feed all their nuclear reactors in France, which, as we know, is 65% nuclear powered France. So
they need it.
Random fun facts and tangents while we're off on a journey. Cigar Lake, TEPCO own 5% of Cigar Lake.
Is that the TEPCO you mentioned yesterday?
Yeah, Tokyo Electric Power, the old Fukushima operator.
Wow.
And there was, if you go back to 2017, so they actually declared force majeure on their uranium supply contract with Cameco in 2017 after
Fukushima.
18 months of no reactor operation after all the laws, the stop nuclear come in Japan. But then in 2019, Cameco actually won a lawsuit against them and received $40 million in damages, even though they claimed the damages were worth about $700 million.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to know if any new contracts have been signed with TEPCO, with Cameco, to feed this KK plant that we were talking about yesterday, if that comes back online at the end of the year. So anyone got a bit of word on the decline, get in touch. So back onto Orano. So we can assume Orano get a shitload of uranium from Cigar Lake, MacArthur River. These guys, I guess the French, you would say they know nuclear. The real standout in how much nuclear supplies the electricity for their country. But Niger, that supplied about 15% of France's, the French uranium needs for these reactors. So pretty big chunk coming out of Niger for that. Niger, God's country, they say. Far out, there's a bit going on there. So there's the Niger uranium operations that Orano are also involved in. They're broken up into 3 subsidiaries, like subsidiary companies, where Orano are the majority owner. So the main operation that's been going is the Supplier open pits. That's 63% Orano, 37% owned by the Niger state entity. So that they produce 2,500 tonnes of uranium a year. So I assume because they're quoting uranium tonnes, multiply that by 2,600, that gives you about 6.5 million pounds of U3O8 a year. So then they also had the Cominac. That was an underground uranium mine. That went, so that was, what's the percentage of that? So that Orano were 59% of that. That stopped production in 2021. So that's ceased.
And then there's this Imoran project.
Fuck, this is a bloody Amararan. Fuck, I've got to go back to think. No, I'm just running Amararan. So now Orano owns, that's what they own 66.5% of. Now, that is the annual output of this mine was planned to be double of what Supplier is. So about 13 million pounds of U3O8. So a big operation. They were looking to do a in situ leaching operation.
And I'm curious, Matty, what we've sort of learned in recent weeks is, as a bit of a rule of thumb, you sort of get 70% of what you want out the ground and then 70% through the recoveries. Is that factored into the reserves?
Well, those numbers I quoted with, I guess, the contained reserves in the ground. If you look on the Orano website, it says Amararan is 174,000 tonnes of uranium after recovery.
Okay.
So if you times that by bloody 2,600, you could look at what the pounds were after recovery. So, so big bloody project. You can see, I'll bring it up on the map here. So you got this little uranium hotspot of Niger. It's a lot further south of Supplier, but it's actually directly west of Global Atomics' DASA project, which we'll go into later.
So pre-Fukushima, they got the operating permit, right?
Yeah, so it was 2009. So it was all like this was going to be like the next bloody big thing. They already had Supplier operating and the Cominac. And Fukushima happens in 2011. The whole world of uranium changes, and the project's just been pretty much sitting idle there and never been developed. So Niger are obviously thinking, we gave you the permit in friggin' 2009, yet to receive any money for it. Where's the bloody cash? So fast forward to 2022. This is when the M62 movement started in Niger, and it was like set up by all these different social groups and agencies and stuff, like to essentially oppose the French military presence in Niger and sort of leaning towards supporting Russia. And because that French military presence in Niger, that started in 2014. That was like the counterinsurgency for the Islamic groups in the region, or the Islamic threat. So similar to what happened in like Mali, Burkina Faso. And I think that group was also one of their points of opposition was not working with Mali or something as well. There was another. Yeah, can't get too deep in the geopolitical. Know your lane, Matthew. So, and the group claimed that France, among other things, was exploiting Niger for their natural resources, and which is mostly uranium. I think there's gold as well and coal, but yeah, uranium's the big one. So the previous president that was overturned in July 2023, this President Bazoum, he was the pro-French president. So the military junta, whenever you hear military junta, you think, Jesus, hectic. And that's essentially who overturned him. And then the French troops actually withdrew from Niger in December last year. And the US still had military presence in Niger because they were, working with the French and on the counter-terrorism side. Then you remember in March this year when the US started to cut their ties with Niger because it was reported that Niger were exploring a uranium deal with Iran, which giving uranium to Iran, the fear that Iran will then enrich it to be used in nuclear weapons. So, and an article, actually, I found an article last week on the Jerusalem Post. I've had a bloody subscription to the Jerusalem Post for years. I love it.
It's a regular.
Just love
bookmark.
it. Read it on the shitter every morning.
AFR, Jerusalem Post.
No, it goes Jerusalem Post, AFR. The article said that Iran actually purchased 300 tons of yellowcake from Niger in exchange for drones and surface-to-air missiles. So what a trade there. So both things can just cause destruction. So the US started actually pulling forces out of Niger. They removed 1,000 military people in April. They'll be all gone by September. And also in April this year, the Russian military presence started to lift in Niger. So 100 Russian military instructors arrived to assist Niger with operating air defense systems that were supplied by Moscow. So essentially, Niger are now using Russia to fight Islamist insurgents instead of France and the US. And I guess you can now look and say on the back of this, you've got Irano, the French, they're operating Supplier, but now it is looking like the mining permit tomorrow, June 19th, is not going to be renewed for Irano to operate in Mararan. I'm saying it different every time. So I think they can still operate Supplier until 2040 for now, Irano, but you can safely assume that I'd say this permit will be going to Rosatom, i.e. Russia. Even though an article came out last week that Rosatom denies reports of plans to acquire French uranium assets in Niger. I'll bring up that. But I would not
super interesting
believe that when you've got the biggest one of the biggest uranium deposits in the world, and Russia can now assisting the country.
You always, whenever you see kind of like, I don't know, some of the political influence from non-West, the Russias and Chinas of the world in Africa, you always think, how many paper bags have been exchanged and all that sort of stuff.
Well, just think of what military assistance is. It's like the French have gone in there to assist military because if Niger bloody shits itself and gets taken over, that's like it's reliability of electricity for France. They need the people there to protect their bloody uranium supply. And now Russia are thinking, oh shit, maybe we'll take that uranium supply.
Yeah. What are the implications for Irano, do you think?
Well, they will have to find uranium somewhere else because they've already announced plans to build even more reactors. I think another 8 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. Yeah. So you know, there's still. It's not going to take away uranium right now because the project's not developed. Yeah. It's if something happens with Supplier as well in future.
Yeah.
But you'd think, Jesus Christ, you got the French operating one, and then you got Russia down there operating that. I think things would be a bit bloody tense. I think look at that map. How far is it away? I think within 100 kilometres, 20. So they look about 60 kilometres apart. Mararan and Supplier, so 60, 70. So
it's close.
That'd be a bit bloody uneasy. You got Russia down here and the French up here.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's one Hail Mary, I think, for Irano. If anyone from Irano is listening, I've got a play for you, but you probably got to get in quick. Better make sure there's some frickin' CRE insurance policies in place for both Supplier and even Mararan, because look, they're African insurance specialists.
They are.
So might be a saving grace just to get some cash back if it gets taken off here. Because, gee, if they can insure Africa so adequately, geez, it'd be a piece of piss to insure Australia.
Mate,
like any mining stuff in Australia.
Got like, bloody international arbitration written all over it. They insure against that.
Yeah, mate. Oh, mate. CRE,
Don't know if they do
I'm
it.
all about slogans at the
Shoot, they
moment. CRE Insurance, the powerhouse in global mining insurance. Like you can just feel it, can't you?
Yeah,
Bloody.
But you can absolutely get rug pulled investing in Africa, and what helps you avoid that rug pull?
CR Insurance.
100%.
Yeah. And like once you got the policy in place, you can go nuts and completely fuck the mine or just lose it or whatever. You got the insurance. It doesn't matter.
You'd sleep that good at night, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Just 8 hours every night. Every night, 100% of the time. So, yeah, the one of the other Niger operations in question is the Global Atomic one, the DASA project. So that's been in the news a bit as well. So, because that's well into development. Like they're bloody doing all the capital development down to the ore body. So they're about 1 kilometre of development completed. So that's going to be around £4 million a year by the looks, not nowhere near as big as Mararan.
And
I'm getting better at saying that.
It's been remarkably resilient, the stock, right?
Yeah, well, it's because Global Atomic, they own 80% of this one and Niger own 20%. And the government originally only had 10%, but they actually committed to acquiring and funding a further 10%. So if that's happening, that's probably perceived as a positive. And they had like a site visit the other start of May, the Niger mining minister. So it all sounds positive. So it doesn't sound like they're cutting off ties with America or anything. But the overhang for Global Atomic is finalising the funding, the finance commitment from this lending syndicate that they were going to be using, because they were looking to use 60% debt. So US $295 million this debt funding was going to be. And that all got put up in the air when the US troops started leaving Niger back in April, I think it was. So share price started to crumble. Waiting to see next month. I think next month's when the lending syndicate are going to, I guess, give the yes or no to Global Atomic. But look, obviously they've said they've been approached about numerous other funding options. So, prepayments on uranium delivery contracts, strategic investment from PE or financial institutions, minority JV investment.
Yeah.
Or obviously a capital raise. So pretty much looking to get cash however they can. Can Russia take this off them? Trav?
Doubt it. Like foreign investment approvals, just all of those approvals that you need for, we've got FIRB in Australia, but there's kind of equivalent sort of, foreign investment review boards around globally, and this is a Canadian listed company. So
the mechanism how Russia are getting hold of Mararan is Niger are not
paper bag to the government.
Well, they're not renewing the permit, and bloody, it's like see you later. Russia will take it. Yeah. So that would have to happen. Something like that would have to happen for Russia to sneak into this one as well.
Yeah,
so
that's not by
choice.
Looks
to be de-Russiaed.
Mate, I got a uranium fun fact for you, by the way.
Do ya?
This is your ballpark, but talking about
yeah.
Because common theme. What have we been talking about commonly on Money Mine lately? Uranium and Robert Friedland. I can bring the two together with Niger. There's another listed uranium company called GoviX, which is run by Robert Friedland's son, whose name is Govindra or something along those lines. Anyway, had to check it history. Wouldn't recommend it too much, but
maybe he's going to have like the big rebirth like Robert Friedland did, because Robert Friedland ain't always been Robert Friedland. Listen to the Founders podcast on him. That's bloody interesting.
Toxic Barb.
Toxic Barb. Yeah. So bloody, I just friggin' eyes on this. The bloody Russia getting in there, like it's obviously been happening a while. Like you've seen in the protests when they were when they had the coup, like the Niger, the part of this M62 are wearing bloody Russian coloured, like Russian flag coloured clothes, and like it was their pro Russia. So bloody fascinating. Groups, I'll be just interested to see what happens with that Sumer as well. If they don't want the French there that much, God, it looks friggin' hostile there.
Love your work, Matty.
Go Australia. Right, JD.
We'll stay on the theme of
Did any
energy,
of that make
lads.
sense?
That was good.
Thanks,
I
lads.
learned a bit. That was good.
Yeah.
So we'll stay on the theme of energy, mate, but a bit of a different form.
We
of
talk about energy a lot now. Like we fucking
Yeah.
never talk. When this started, there was no uranium, no oil and gas, and it's taken over.
Yeah, we're expanding our horizons, mate. So
Batteries don't work, mate. Sorry. No, batteries do work.
Batteries.
batteries are still evolving. But Beach Energy, they are a company who are really trying to lift their game. So capped at $3.5 billion. They've had a pretty ordinary run of it for the best part of 5 years, maybe even longer. They've come out with a big strategic review, which normally means shit's gone wrong and we need to rationalise things and take a look at all our assets and work on things a bit. So in the immediate aftermath, the stock came off 3%, although it was down as much as 7% as the market sort of works through and digests the news. You guys remember 2 or 3 months ago now, they had a blowout at Waitsia, that sort of Waitsia stage 2, the expansion. And
Where's that one again?
WA.
Perth Basin.
That's the Perth Basin one.
Yeah, so that is a JV that they're in, and
With Mitsui, right?
yeah, with Mitsui, that's right. And I think on the day the stock came off over 20%, so from $1.90 now trading at $1.50. So
I think that the EPC for that is Clough, and they went to administration. It's just a cluster.
Well, they don't bloody
It's been-
Mitsui would have been straight onto that. They don't call them Mitsui for nothing.
So yeah, I mean that happened. You're right. Back in 2022, it's been a sort of ongoing disaster. But there's been plenty of changes. So Beach's CEO is a guy called Brett Woods. He's the old Santos COO. Started the gig in January, handpicked by Mr. Stokes, obviously the big shareholders here. And he even in the opening sort of parts of the call referenced Santos and Gallagher targeting this free cash flow break-even price of US $30 a barrel equivalent. Obviously, they've got a whole bunch of energy products that they put out there. So he clearly wants to put a mold on this business. And this strategic review was centered around a few different aspects. Getting rid of the non-core assets, cutting costs, both CapEx and OpEx, and then growing, both organic and inorganic growth. At the end of the day, just becoming a better business, as well as revising down the reserves at, one of the assets, the non-core ones in New Zealand and other assets as well. So prior to the changes, they had 5 operating basins. Like we said here, Matty, the Perth Basin, then Taranaki out in New Zealand, the Otway, that was sort of in 2 parts, the Bass just further to the east off the Victorian coast, and the Cooper Basin. And after
Cooper's up in Queensland, eh?
Cooper is South Australia.
Oh, that there. Which one's up in Queensland?
This one crosses into Queensland. So it's South Australia, New South Wales, Queensland, in and around the
in the bloody
in the northeast
bloody
corner.
Birdsville, I think.
I've got a map right there. You can see exactly where it is. Mate.
There it is.
Yeah.
I swear Birdsville's up that way somewhere. Yeah.
So they're going to focus that asset right down. Perth Basin, they got Waitsia and Beharra Springs. In the Cooper Basin, they've got this JV that they're in, plus the western flank. And then the Otway, they're going to focus on the Victorian assets and try and get rid of the South Australian Otway Basin assets, which is a non-core asset. So you've got some of these where the JVs operating some, not operating others. And like I said, getting rid of that South Australia Otway, the Bass Basin, and the New Zealand assets. Now, what they're going to do with these non-core assets is, in their words, harvesting, repurposing, or divesting. So essentially, they don't want to sink any more money into these. They would love to get rid of them and get some cash for them, although that's not always viable. There's only certain people, like you said, Trav, that you can sell these things to.
I'm pretty sure they're such late life, they're worth negative.
Exactly. You've got these rehab costs and so on.
I'm pretty sure the Bass is definitely sort of worth negative. I'm not as familiar with the New Zealand one. But
yeah. And I mean, it's what shareholders would want to hear. They don't want to put any more cash into these bad assets.
It's like Woodsmith. Just fucking stop.
Exactly. So you got to sort of realize that, you might have put a bit of bad money into it, but let's kind of get on with it.
Geez, you'd have your work cut out for you being an accountant for these mobs, eh? All these JVs and bloody, mate, it'd be a frigging headache.
You'd be earning your money, mate.
Oh, wouldn't you? Bloody JD, run us through the cost cutting.
I got to say, Matty, I really enjoyed this slide that they chucked up. So cost and CapEx reductions, and the sort of subheading there is significant operated cost and capital reductions delivered to date. So they are targeting getting rid of $220 million in costs per annum through the reduction of operating as well as sustaining capital. Essentially, they've gotten pretty fat, and now they're trying to run through and trim it all. We're talking about reducing headcount. Obviously, unfortunate when people let go, but this company's clearly taken a bit more than it can chew. OPEX through all sorts of inefficiencies, drilling cost optimization, as well as sustaining capital. And they're going to have to try and pull in some heads on the assets that they're not even operating to try and bring those operating costs down, such as the Cooper Basin JV. And then they want to pull down their unit costs as well. Part of this will come by stopping sinking capital into those non-core higher cost assets. Plus, you've got Waitsia and a couple gas fields in the Otway coming online. They should be lower cost assets. And then you've got removing the inefficiencies as well. So for reference, the company did $930 million in operating cash flow in FY23, but they still spent almost $1.2 billion in CapEx. And that means you're moving backwards.
Yeah, far out.
The reality of these, especially like late life oil and gas assets is as they get later and later life, you have to invest more and more to maintain production because of the decline rates. And so, at some point, you got to part ways with them because you're not harvesting cash from them.
It's like getting bloody the last bit of tomato sauce out of a fucking.
That is such a good analogy.
Like you just fucking got to shake it. Honey. You got to put the thing in the fucking microwave to loosen it up.
I've never done that.
Oh, like you just to make drop the viscosity.
That's such a good analogy.
That is a perfect analogy, Matty. So then
I'm here all week, boys.
on the other end of the spectrum, we've talked about costs. You've got sales, revenue. So once Waitsia is ramped up, it's been delayed, but in about a year's time, we should see that one humming. You're going to see 75% of the sales be oil price linked, and then the remaining 25 be gas/LNG. Looking at the market, your favourite market, the Korean and Japanese market, Matty, for
probably moving there.
The LNG pricing there. And they're aiming to bring online about a combined 150 terajoules per day by 2026. So Waitsia, like I said, stage 2 coming online first half of calendar year 25, and then you got the 2 gas fields in the Otway, which one's just been hooked in, Enterprise, and the next one should be hooked in by the second half of this calendar year. And that should position them pretty well. We've spoken over the past year or so with certain investors that have been quite bullish this East Coast energy market, essentially saying that the East Coast is short energy supply. And these guys, if they can actually get there and get the energy flowing, they should be positioned fairly well. They've got fixed price volumes, that they've contracted out, which are rolling off. So they should be available, open to receiving slightly better pricing if the pricing moves in their favour by 2026. And then you've got M&A, Trav. So you pointed this out and said earlier today, it looks like they might be opening themselves up to M&A just by the way they came out and wrote down a bunch of assets and talking about a strategic review. So
you can't talk about consolidation or, this is an announcement about rationalisation, but rationalisation in my mind, is like the thing you do before consolidation as well.
Who's going to buy all these non-core things that are getting at the end of the life?
They might not even be able to sell them. They might just try and harvest them, in their words, and then have to.
So harvesting's like a care and maintenance.
You have to commit.
Yeah,
you have to. Sometimes you can repurpose these things for carbon storage shit. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you've got to do the rehab if it's offshore and all that sort of stuff. But and then sometimes there are these rougher and leaner sort of nimble little companies that reckon they can make a quid doing it. But the governments can be a bit scathing if you sell it to someone who actually can't afford to fund the rehab obligations of it, and they end up going belly up. There was this precedent with Noga and Woodside back in the day, which kind of
Woodside
led to a lot of reform.
Yeah.
Matt,
do you think of harvesting a bit more kind of like Edna May in a way? It's kind of getting to the end. Harvesting cash flows are not sinking It's not quite care and maintenance yet, but
yep,
you're not
yep.
far from it. So they've put out a new guideline, a new framework for how they're going to approach M&A, kind of resetting the bar, 12% minimum IRR for gas, 15% for oil, and looking at strategic assets, in their words, is very much a part of the growth potential. And I got the impression, just listening to the call, that once the cost reductions are underway, M&A is firmly on the cards. Perhaps in a year or so's time, once you've got Waitsia coming on, Enterprise and Thylacine are flowing, they'll be much better positioned. Hopefully the stock has performed on the back of the market appreciating that they can actually deliver on something. And then you've even, hopefully, in the case of the company, got the option of using scrip in any sort of deal if the price is a bit more reflective of what the management think is the intrinsic value of the business. And then they just mentioned that they've got potential to use up to 25% gearing through the cycle. So
if they do all this, JD, like they trim the fat, get rid of some non-core assets or harvest these non-core assets, are they more inclined to grow or be bought?
I reckon grow.
Grow.
I reckon Santos's domestic assets will find their way into the beach portfolio.
Yeah. And I think that firmly how they want to position themselves as a leader in that Australian domestic gas market.
Eventually might be bought. I think SGH owns, which is seven group holdings. So you think Ryan Stokes, Kerry Stokes, I think they own 30%.
Yeah, 30%.
So you can't get a deal done, right? There's no way they can get acquired unless Kerry and Ryan say
Want it.
yes.
Yeah.
But Kerry and Ryan can buy it one day if they want to. They've privatised businesses in the past.
Think
themselves.
Boral very recently.
Yeah.
In terms of expanding the business, we're talking about assets here. There's a couple other options they might have, which they put out on a slide, just looking at that full energy value chain. We're talking about things like energy storage plus marketing and trading being firmly part of that core business. And then you've got gas-powered generation, potentially peaking and or baseload is a strategic adjacency, as well as power trading, a adjacent growth. So overall, it's quite a turnaround job that Woods has come in. And I think in a year's time, you should, and if you're a shareholder, you'd expect to see noticeable difference in the cost bases. It's a bit of a classic turnaround book, stripping costs, selling assets you don't want, writing down, resetting investors' expectations, and then sort of building from there. But they're in a very promising position, I think, and despite a heap of frustrating announcements for shareholders, they're positioned well in markets that are short supply. And if they can deliver, they're going to sort of go from being a company that was a patchy explorer and developer to a company that's actually going to generate a fair bit of cash.
But had this revolving door of management as well over the last few years, and if they can just have like some stability there, it'll go a long way.
Yeah, and they've got the person that's handpicked, like I said, by Stokes, so it's just firmly time to deliver for the company.
Oh, I've been through it before. If anyone from any beach employees are listening, I hope you like the taste of Blend 43 and International Roast. Say goodbye to your cappuccinos. That's what the coffee will be after this.
They're getting leaner. I love it.
Straight out of the big tin. Right, Trav, let's talk about, we've gone uranium, oil and gas, now we're going to rail. Rail, freight, Genesis, getting the government nod or bloody, it has merit to get rid of some railway line.
Yeah, I've got 3 open, pittable, undeveloped gold resources I'm gonna go through, Matty. For the gold bugs out there.
It's not all about trains.
No. It's an infrastructure segment now.
Right. Diversify.
But to kick it off, right, so there was this article in the West Australian today that the WA government is all aboard on Raleigh Finlayson's rail removal plans as a booster for local jobs. Look at this photo of Rail. I think that's a Diggers and Dealers.
Is that Rail or Rail? Rail Finlayson.
In front of the Goldfields Art Centre.
I wish they snuck an eye in there.
I'll read out this highlighted bit of the article. A LinkedIn post shared by Genesis Minerals earlier this year showed Transport Minister and Deputy Premier Rita Safodi had visited the Gwalia mine about 2 months ago. The proposal appears to have merit, and in particular, the proposal would help create new economic activity and jobs in the area, a state government spokesperson said. These discussions are ongoing and agreement needs to be reached between a number of parties. Among those parties are BHP Nickel West, and Glencore, who did not provide a comment regarding rail line negotiations. Lynas Rare Earths responded by referencing Brookfield Infrastructure-owned ARC Infrastructure's intention to work with the state government, so there was no impact to operations. Genesis is also working towards a mining agreement with the local traditional owners, the Dalo. I find all of this really interesting, Matty and JD. If you think about the credentials of the Genesis team versus the rotating door of St. Barb's execs over the years, you'd think Genesis would have a much better chance of getting the railway diverted or whatever to mine Tower Hill, right? And Tower Hill is a massive bit of contingent value in the Genesis portfolio. If they can mine it soon, huge for them.
It is, you would say Tower Hill is the Genesis story that everyone is in for.
It's their bread and butter, right? It's like open pit, under juicy ore body, which, it's kind of the simplicity of that is sort of what those sort of ore bodies and everything is what grew Saracen. It's what, their bread and butter as opposed to the tough underground kind of gig with an old mine. But if they
close to 2 grams, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a pretty standout open pit.
If they can't mine it, life's just a much tougher slog for longer, and they have to grind it out with tougher ore bodies, which have less margin for error. And I'd love to better understand the full list of stakeholders that need to approve this. The West article suggests it's BHP, Glencore, Lynas, ARC, state government, traditional owners, but what or who else? I found this map in a Genesis presentation, and it looks to me like the railway in that yellow and black section there, it's actually going to get removed. And they point to this thing, the terminus, which I assume the end of the railway. It's no longer going to be near town, but it's going to be near Gwalia instead. So in my head, I actually thought that they were diverting the railway around Tower Hill.
I think that's how it was portrayed initially, or unless that was
maybe
how
we
the
just
street.
portrayed it that way.
Yeah, but that was. I think the word was they have to divert the railway, but it looks like they're removing it and changing where the terminus is, the terminus infrastructure, which I assume is that where the loading and unloading and shit happens.
That must be right. So it's a different proposition to diverting it around Tower Hill if you're just stopping it, before Gwalia and rebuilding, I guess, the terminus infrastructure out of town instead.
It must be easier and cheaper to rebuild the terminus infrastructure than diverting the whole railway.
But probably more complexity negotiating with all the parties that are using that railway, right? Because the haulage could be, a bit more expensive for the BHPs and Glencores and Lynases of the world if they have to now, haul a little bit further from the north to get to
go around or through Leonora to get to the new
I just think negotiating that sounds a bit more complex if it's not diverted, because there's more implications to the other parties who are using that railway.
Yeah, they're gonna have to probably negotiate with DSI as well. They're another stakeholder. Did you mention them?
Come to mind? No, I did.
Will you think of the amount of ground support needed for like Gwalia Deeps and all the underground developments and expansions and rebirths in the Leonora and Laverton district? Mate, DSI are going to start filling up trains to get the ground support there. She ain't coming in by truck. And like the rate DSI are going, they're going to be as big as Glencore soon.
Mate, DSI's got like 24-hour turnaround in WA. So I don't even think it's coming in by train, mate. That's just like, it's coming in by plane.
Yeah, it's like
gets airdropped.
A Brooks airdrop. Yeah. So God, imagine how big they're going to be after we've finished bloody talking about them, like how integral they are in underground mining. Like, talk about a global powerhouse. We'll never finish talking about DSI.
Gwalia is either the deepest or the second deepest mine in Australia.
Yeah, I don't know
operating
which is
one.
deepest
CSA, Gwalia.
CSA and
pretty
Gwalia.
Damn close, but both of them would be having to use bloody DSI to mine that
most definitely. God, the bloody
that sort of pressure.
CSA. Funny you mentioned CSA. Apparently there's like this bloody scuttlebutt going around that they hate me because I was saying something about their productivity. When I was sticking up for them, I could play snippets, but I'm not going to go to that level. I was sticking up for the workforce from comments made by someone else in the bloody company. God, tell you what.
If you want to upset Matty, just take your
You know what things that upset me? I don't care if people get upset about things I say. It's when people get upset about things I haven't even fucking said. Jeez, that pisses me off. Fucking hell. Anyway, where were we?
DSI. Chuck another DSI order in anyway.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So, back to that like relocation of the terminus. So Genesis say that site infrastructure, including rail, would be $80 million, and then pre-stripping another $120 million. So, like, that's kind of the capex in mind for Tower Hill. But the prize is obviously an attractive one for Genesis, though. Like, how many ore bodies like Tower Hill are still out there? 7-year mine life. I think the operating strip ratio is 9-1, which is maybe a bit on the higher end, but not too bad. 2 gram per ton reserves.
So that's the number.
Yeah.
2 gram reserves for a pit. Like that's that is pretty impressive.
Totally.
And if you can chuck it all in the stripping cost, how good that all-in sustaining cost look?
Amazing. Which brings me to
growth capital.
The second company I want to talk about, right? Because how many are in WA? Let's talk about Ausgold, guys.
Ausgold back in the news.
Yeah, there's some renewed interest in Ausgold lately, gents.
We've got to do a ding, ding, ding for Ali. I think we should. And they recently recapitalised, almost capitalised, a big raising for a company that was sort of circa 70 million market cap.
And a bit of it was a management revamp.
Yeah, they're home to the Katanning Gold Project, or if you were around a decade ago, the South Boddington Gold Project.
The next Boddington.
Yeah. Completely different geological trend. But this is one of those projects. It's been around forever, studied to death, but it's not developed, and it's in WA. So why the renewed interest? Well, gold prices obviously been flying, and like you said, Matty, the incumbent board has sort of been swept out. Kind of the new board and management has come in and brought a lot of new capital too. Specifically, on the 20th of May, Richard Lockwood and Dennis Rackett stepped down from the board, and John Dorwood, former president of Ausgold, came in as exec chairman, with Adrian Goldman joining as a non-executive director too. And look at that one day, what happened on the Spark chart. Massive volume, stock up 35% on that day. And then on the 6th of June, Ausgold raised $38 to accelerate development, which is that 38 million was a big number. It surprised me to the upside for sure. You saw Dundee and Jupiter, who were both on the register already. They did a lot of the grunt work in that raise, and it was really chunky given the company's size. So post raise, when all of the shares are allotted, Ausgold will have a pro forma market cap of 125 million and 36 million of cash. They've kicked the DFS down the road again, which has been a real drag for shareholders. Just ask LEGC, who, like you said, JD is a ding, ding, ding on this name, reluctantly. But speaking about Tower Hill earlier, simple open pit, Saracen specialty, Capricorn specialty. And it's fascinating in Ausgold's investor deck just how much they are drawing comparisons to Capricorn's Karlawinda project. There's literally a slide with a quote from John Goodman making the exact comparison. It's Ausgold today is where Capricorn was with Karlawinda Gold Project circa 2020, except Ausgold's Katanning project is bigger.
But I think there's another big difference as well.
I don't think Karlawinda had to buy a fuckload of farms around them. And
there's lots of differences, but when you're raising money, Matty, you don't talk about the bad stuff.
$38 ain't going to get you too far.
You look at the comps table, right? So they do this comps table, and honestly, I was looking at the numbers there, and on paper, I was surprised at how similarly it did compare to Karlawinda, right? But in my mind, Karlawinda has an amazing strip ratio, hence the ability to mine it profitably at the low grade that we all kind of know it is. So I look at that table and I think, surely Ausgold doesn't actually have a lower strip ratio than Karlawinda, like the table says. That doesn't make any fucking sense to me. And then I'll look through the details and there's nuance, right? So Ausgold, they did a PFS in 2022 based on a 3 million tonne per annum mining scenario. In that PFS, the strip ratio is 9-1. And then in 2023, they released a scoping study on an enlarged 5 million tonne per annum scenario instead. And in that scenario, the stripping ratio comes right down to 4.1-1, which is the number you see in the comps table. So an apples to apples comparison, you probably want to compare the 3 million tonne Karlawinda to the 3 million tonne Katanning. And the strip ratio is quite different there.
The thing with Karlawinda was the strip ratio was so good at the start with the end of in the free dig, they creamed it at the start. So I think it's going to that 4.8 I think it's back end weighted. But they just creamed it at the start and they made the cash.
It was humming very quickly, Karlawinda. You're 100% right. I find it all interesting though, right? And when gold is running and people are looking to they're looking for leverage to that gold price via an undeveloped project in WA, where do they go? De Grey, Spartan, they're in the billions of market cap, right? And for for good reason. So the value hunters are going down the list, and there's an unloved project that has bloody been around forever. But, TBA, whether its future is Karlawinda or Mount Todd, because it can go either way,
Yeah, good old Mount Todd. You love Mount Todd these days, don't you, Trav?
Oh, mate.
Stoider's got your back going on that, didn't he?
And you got one more you want to talk about, mate?
Yeah, it brings me to
Snowline.
Snowline Gold. This is a company.
Where the fuck did you find this, Trav?
Twitter. Yeah.
Go Australia.
Shout out Pete Panda. It was his Twitter post. Anyway, this is a company we haven't talked about before, but it's on the on the topic of all of these, open pit gold resources. Like this one fits right in there. Overnight, this TSX V listed company released their maiden resource for their Valley Gold prospect, and the company has a hefty market cap, right? So it's an 882 million in Canadian dollars market cap, big exploration portfolio up in the Yukon territory.
Ah, that's the Foxtel shows.
Yep.
The Yukon Gold.
That's what I think of. That's all I know.
What is it? Parker Schnabel. That's it.
So the Snowline's Rogue project is the flagship project there, and this mineral resource for Valley fits within that. And you look at the headline figures for this maiden resource, and they're pretty friggin' awesome numbers. Total 7.3 million ounces for 1.45 grams per tonne, of which there's 4 million ounces indicated at 1.66 grams per tonne.
Jeez, that's fucking bloody huge.
But take a look at this, this long section here of the resource. You can see the sequential pit shells there. Look at shell 1. Now, you love to see deposits like this, right? Where the higher grade stuff can be mined first. That shell 1 looks to be 2.3 grams per tonne. Produced 3 million ounces of gold, and look at the bloody strip ratio there. There's absolutely stuff all waste material. There, it's just
you just mine it.
A little bit of
there's
cover.
Obviously going the other way,
but you know what I mean. Like on those headline numbers, that shit's all over. Tower Hill, Katanning, Karlawinda. But of course, it's not as simple as just looking at the headline numbers. There's MET, there's permitting, infrastructure, processing, all that sort of stuff to take into account. But we barely ever show love or interest in the Canadians. And this one caught my eyes, gents. I just think it's worthy of further investigation, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. The Yukon up there is a sort of magnificent part of the world with mountains and lakes and stuff. So I wonder how the permitting go. I'm sure that'll be a big open pit like that. But the numbers look really good there, don't they?
Mate, looks a dream to mine if there's no waste.
I'll throw money in a North American open pit ahead of a North American underground. Put it that way.
Less workforce issues.
Oh, no, probably work better. Yeah, don't know. Yeah.
Good stuff, gents.
Oh, good.
Couple of partners to thank.
Oh, JD. Show your appreciation to the people that appreciate us.
I will, mate. So in the show, CRE Insurance, African specialist, as you rightly said.
And Australian specialist, because if they do it in Africa, they do it anywhere.
That's too right. And we also had DSI Underground, just keeping the underground mining industry up and fighting.
Keeping the world alive.
It's true. It's very true. And we've also got VRIFY, GetWet Solutions, Silverstone powering the industry, WA Waterboards, Brooks Airways, and K-Drill.
Oh, and bloody good Spark chart before. Bloody get on to it. If you get Spark, I'll say thanks.
Thank you.
Personally, JD.
On that note, hooroo.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation and needs.